Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India NewsHour, India's voice to the world. I'm Unfounded Bhattacharya. Coming up in the next hour. Election day voting begins in the United States with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris vying to become the next president of the United States of America. India says Canada has developed a pattern of making allegations without evidence, slams placing of Indian diplomats under surveillance. Shooting in Pakistan's Karachi injures 2 Chinese nationals. French and Dutch authorities raid streaming giant Netflix's offices in Paris and Amsterdam as part of a tax fraud probe. First up, the latest on the US presidential election. The United States has officially begun voting on Tuesday to elect its 47th president after the conclusion of turbulent campaigns. The New Hampshire hamlet of Dixville Notch opened its polling at the stroke of midnight on Tuesday, traditionally marking the start of the US election hours before the rest of the country does. People in Michigan enthusiastically lined up at polling stations to cast their votes. Michigan, remember, is one of the 7 key battleground states where US Vice President Kamala Harris is running neck and neck with former US President Donald Trump. Voters in North Carolina and Georgia also cast their ballots on Tuesday. Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance cast his vote in Cincinnati, Ohio. J.D. Vance joined millions of Americans who were headed to the polls to choose the president.
Look, I feel good. You never know until you know, but I feel good about this race. I felt good about my own race a couple of years ago when I voted in this exact same spot. Hopefully it goes as well for President Trump and me as it went for me a couple of years ago in the state of Ohio.
So Vance has voted already, and Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump arrived at West Palm Beach early on Tuesday after winding up his poll campaign as millions of Americans headed to the polls to choose between 2 sharply different visions for the country. Both Trump and Democrat Kamala Harris predicted a victory in their final day of campaigning, with polls showing the race as extremely close. Trump is due to cast his vote at Mandel Recreation Center in Palm Beach. On election day, Donald Trump posted on social media calling it the most important day in American history. He wrote, and I quote, "It is now officially election day. This will be the most important day in American history. Voter enthusiasm is through the roof because people want to make America great again. That means lines are going to be long. I need you to deliver your vote no matter how long it takes. Stay in line." Taking on Kamala Harris, he said the radical communist Democrats want you to pack up and go home. Together we are going to have a tremendous victory and make America great again. So we are counting down to that moment when Donald Trump and wife Melania Trump will be casting their ballots. While Kamala Harris appealed to voters on election day, posting on social media, she stated, and I quote, "Today is your last chance to make an impact in this election. Help reach every last voter before polls close." So how does America vote? Well, Americans do not directly vote for their president. Instead, they vote to determine the composition of the Electoral College, which elects the US president. Here's how the election number game works in the US presidential election.
It's decision day in the America's battle for the White House, even if the results could take days to sort through. Under the US system, citizens do not vote directly for their leader. Instead, their ballots elect the 538 members of the group called the Electoral College, which then elects the president and the vice president of the United States. 270 is the majority mark, so the winner needs to secure 270 electors. Each state is allocated a specific number of electors, which is somewhat based on population. A vote cast in favor of a certain candidate is in effect meant to elect the candidate's state of electors in a state. These electors are chosen by the political parties prior to the election.
If you are registered to vote,
to win the presidency, a candidate needs to cobble together victories in enough states to reach the 270 mark in the Electoral College. Most states, with the exception of Maine and Nebraska, have a winner-takes-all system. This means whoever wins the popular mandate in the state secures its entire allocation in the Electoral College. This makes the result in most states, which are either firmly Democratic or Republican, a foregone conclusion before the first ballot is cast. It also means that certain states where the race is particularly close have outsized importance in the election. Most of the 82 million Americans have voted ahead of the election day voting in Tuesday in early voting. That is more than half of the total ballots cast in the last presidential election in 2020. Let's see as to why the results could be delayed. Certification is a formality, but there are risks it could be obstructed in certain states. In the immediate aftermath of the 2020 presidential election, at least 70 country election officials across 6 swing states attempted to prevent certification of country vote totals, many citing unsubstantiated claim of voter fraud in an attempt to justify their actions. This widespread effort to block certification in 2020 was unprecedented. Though the attempts failed across the board, contested certifications can potentially sabotage democratic elections around the United States. Interference with the certification now threatens to recur in the aftermath of the 2024 presidential elections. Successful obstructions could impact state and federal certification deadlines. Now let's take a look at what the deadlines are. The deadline for states to certify their results is 11th December, but many key states have earlier deadlines. Georgia, for example, must certify its final tally by November 22nd, while Michigan and Pennsylvania have until November 25th. Each state's appointed electors then cast their votes for the candidate who won in their popular vote. By December 25th, the electoral certificates of each state must be received by the president of the upper chamber of the US legislature, who is also the vice president of the United States, in this case, Kamala Harris. On January 6th, the US legislature counts and confirms the results before the new president is inaugurated on January 20th. Bureau Report, DD India.
And our correspondents are on ground zero. Joining us are Shubhendu Ghosh from Washington, D.C. and Amritpal Singh from Palm Beach, Florida. Such a pleasure to have you. It's just the start of what's going to be marathon, maybe next few days, next few weeks, or for one doesn't really know for how long. Well, Shubhendu, how is the election day morning looking in Washington, D.C.?
Well, Munmun, good morning to you from Washington, D.C., the seat of the power in the United States. What an election it has been, so bitterly fought, and this is the big day. It has started already. Brisk voting is being reported across different polling stations in Washington, D.C. 7 a.m. is when the polling started. It will continue till later in the evening, but even the election day is going to be so long drawn. Given the time zones across which the United States is situated, California on the West Coast is about 3 hours behind Washington, D.C. So there the voting would just start and would continue later than 7 p.m. here in Washington, D.C. So it is going to be a long day. The brisk voting has started. There is a certain degree of excitement and tension in the air, a lot of pressure on the voters. This is not one of those elections where supporters, voters can sit on the fence and watch from a distance. Both leaders have said that there is absolutely no chance that even a single vote could be left to waste, and therefore every vote counts. We saw those historic numbers in the early voting, over 80 million Americans voting in the early voting. The last record was held in 2020 elections when 2/3 of the registered voters had voted. But the brisk numbers that we're looking at, the queues that are already forming at the polling stations, expectations are that this very, very polarized elections could break the previous record of voter participation. Munmun?
Oh, indeed. At least half of those who voted last time around have already voted, haven't they? Well, Amrit, is anticipation building up there as Donald and Melania Trump ready to cast their ballots in Palm Beach?
That's right. It's around the curb because the media is not allowed near polling stations. So we're standing here. Donald Trump and Melania are expected in about an hour and a half from now to come and cast their votes. Donald Trump chose not to cast his vote in early voting, while Kamala Harris did. But as Shubhendu was saying, that a lot of people have already cast their votes. About 74 million have cast their votes in early voting and mail-in voting. Counting of that is going to take place, once the polls close, and that's where it takes time. But today, where I am in West Palm Beach, you can see long queues of voters outside the polling stations waiting to cast their vote. That it's been about 3.5 hours since voting began here. So there is considerable enthusiasm, one, and secondly, because it was so high stakes, both parties went all out to get their voter base out and still working to get each and every voter out, and that's why you see these long queues. If there are any indication, voting could surpass what the figures of 2020, Munmun.
Absolutely. Looking forward to how Florida votes this time around. It voted Republican, I understand, the last 2 times. Well, Shubhendu, Republicans have already filed more than 90 lawsuits challenging voting rules and practices even before a single ballot has been counted. And you would remember attempts to block certification that have been seen in the past election particularly. Is it a deeply divided polity and society? And among voters, building on what you had said earlier, do you sense a sense of fatigue or excitement peaking, or a bit of both?
Most certainly, Munmun, whether it's deeply divided society in general or not, but in this polling season, the issues have polarized people to a great extent. We saw Kamala Harris equating these elections with the rights of women, with women's right over their own bodies. Donald Trump equating these elections fundamentally with the idea of a secure America, where borders are in control. So in that sense, voters, the choice that have been given to the voters are a very difficult one. So do you choose a secure America, or do you choose women's rights on one side? So in that sense, political polarization has seen the extremes this election season. The litigation, yes, that's what complicates the matters as well. These were on the expected lines. They happened in 2020 as well. A lot of litigations, a lot of lawyers from both sides are ready to approach the courts if the results don't turn in their favor, or if they suspect any malpractice from the other side. So that definitely complicates the election process. Also, security is a major concern. Munmun, I'm standing right in front of the US Capitol building. Remember, in 2021, this was the site of that very, very shocking insurgency attempt where the armed mob had stormed the US Capitol on the day when the Congress was to certify certified the winner of the presidential elections in 2021. And this time over, therefore, the security concerns are really, really high. Here in Washington, D.C. has been turned into a fortress. All important buildings, White House, U.S. Capitol here, Supreme Court and other buildings are completely out of reach for any visitors. Steel fencing barricade these buildings. There are patrolling being done by the police, sniper dogs, by the Secret Service. The National Security Guard, the National Guards have also been put on alert to meet any eventuality. Experts say that the kind of security arrangements at polling booths that has been done this time over has not been seen before. Bulletproof glasses have been put to use. Drone surveillance is being done. There are threats against polling stations and polling officers as well. So in that view, a very, very bitterly fought election, and that really continues as we speak.
Yes, Shubhendu, we'll come to you later on the show as well. Amrit, to you too. But before we let you go, Amrit, one question to you. You would recall that in 2020, some states took over 4 days to declare results, and Biden declared victory after Associated Press called Pennsylvania in his favor 3.5 days after the polls had closed. So how could it be this time around? When will we know the winner?
Okay, that's an interesting question. We don't know yet the answer to that yet, because it takes a long time. How they work here is that the counties have election boards. They declare results, but in a very strange fashion, TV networks start calling in the election as soon as trends are available. So it's easy to do that for predictable states, the ones that vote for red, or the ones that vote for blue. It's easy. It's the battleground states. This time, because it's so neck and neck, and if it goes into recounts, if it goes into lawsuits, litigation, as already it has in some counties, even before the first ballot was cast, it could take a long time. Secondly, 74 million people have cast their votes in both early voting and postal ballot voting. So that has to be counted. So if the election is clear, then you would know by tomorrow who the next president of the United States would be. If it's not, then it could take days, even weeks, before we know who sits in the Oval Office for the next 4 years, Manman.
Too close to call, isn't it? We'll pick on that in a bit, but we'll request you all to stay with us as we come back to you in some minutes from now. And for now, we'll take a breather on DD India NewsHour. Coming up after that, India hosts a maiden Asian Buddhist summit, taking forward its Act East policy. International Solar Alliance showcases milestone solar projects and sets new global priorities at its 7th Assembly.
Who will be the next president of the US? America decides. DD India reports from Ground Zero. Watch live and exclusive coverage on DD India.
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाएगी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour with me, Munmun Bhattacharya. On to some other stories. 2 Chinese nationals were shot at and injured on Tuesday in Pakistan's commercial hub of Karachi, after a string of attacks that spurred Beijing to demand tougher security for its citizens. It was not immediately clear who was responsible. Hospital sources say one of the victims was in serious condition. In October, a bombing near Karachi's international airport killed 2 Chinese engineers in an attack claimed by separatist militant group, the Baloch Liberation Army. India has strongly condemned the recent violence at the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton, Ontario in Canada. The incident has triggered outrage both in Canada and India, with leaders and citizens demanding accountability. There's more in this report.
India has strongly condemned the recent violence at the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton, Ontario, carried out by extremists and separatists. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar described vandalism of the temple as deeply concerning and called for a swift response.
I think what happened at the Hindu temple in Canada was obviously deeply concerning. You would have seen the statement first by our official spokesperson and also the expression of concern by our Prime Minister yesterday. That should, I think, convey to you how deeply we feel about it.
Earlier on Monday, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi also spoke out, condemning the deliberate attack and emphasizing the need to protect places of worship and respect religious sentiments. Taking to social media platform X, PM Modi said, "I strongly condemn the deliberate attack on a Hindu temple in Canada. Equally appalling are the cowardly attempts to intimidate our diplomats. Such acts of violence will never weaken India's resolve. We expect the Canadian government to ensure justice and uphold the rule of law." The incident has sparked widespread protests among the Indian community in Brampton. Demonstrators, deeply hurt by the incident, raised Indian and Canadian national flags and called on officials to take serious action against the perpetrators. There was also anger towards the regional Peel police after a police officer was reportedly suspended for participating in the attack. Protesters expressed frustration, urging politicians to acknowledge Hindu sentiments and ensure stronger protections for the community.
We are deeply hurt as Hindu community what has happened here yesterday, and we have come here in support of Hindu community. Hindu community has contributed so much to Canada, and we are progressive. We add so much economical value. We follow law and order.
As tensions rise, the Indian government has requested that Canadian authorities take decisive action to prevent future incidents and ensure that those responsible for the violence are arrested and prosecuted. Bureau Report, DD India.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is in Australia on the first leg of his two-nation tour. He had an eventful day, including engaging conversations with Justin Bussey at the inaugural session of Raisina Down Under 2024. Here's a report.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar attended the inaugural session of Raisina Down Under, Australia edition of India's Raisina Dialogue in Canberra on Tuesday. Dr. S. Jaishankar is in Australia in the first leg of his two-nation tour. Jaishankar highlighted the remarkable growth in India-Australia partnership in recent years and India's efforts to forge diverse partnership in a multipolar world.
I would say probably the bilateral which has changed the most is Australia. One metric of how a relationship is really okay, so how often did the PMs meet? And if you go beyond that, you look at the quality of our defense cooperation today, the fact that we've been able to do the first phase of a free trade agreement, the fact that Australian universities were the first universities to come and say, okay, we are prepared to explore a new Indian policy regarding foreign educational presence.
External Affairs Minister also emphasized on India's active engagement in grouping like the Quad and BRICS.
Quad has a certain Indo-Pacific context. Again, the manner in which it grew, the building blocks of Quad were very different. In the case of BRICS, it was really a coming together of some large countries whose common feature in many ways was that they were non-Western.
Dr. S. Jaishankar also met Australia's Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister Richard Marles. They spoke about the strong moment in India-Australia's comprehensive strategic partnership. The minister also shared perspective on Indo-Pacific and regional developments. Earlier, Dr. Jayashankar met his Australian counterpart Penny Wong for the 15th India-Australia Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue in Canberra. Both the leaders also deliberated on respective neighborhoods, Indo-Pacific, West Asia, Ukraine, and the global strategic scenario. Bureau Report, DD India.
Buddha Dhamma is a link that connects India and the rest of Asia. They are complementary as the world looks for solutions to unrest and conflict. India hosts the first Asian Buddhist summit, taking forward its Act East policy, which is principled on collective, inclusive and spiritual development of Asia. DD India's Anil Thomas has more.
India is hosting the first Asian Buddhist Summit. Over the next 2 days, it will celebrate the rich heritage of Buddha Dhamma and its influence across Asia. President Draupadi Murmu inaugurated the summit and highlighted the unique position Buddhism holds in the spiritual and cultural history of India and Asia.
If one word can capture the Buddha Dhamma, it has to be Karuna or passion, which is what the world needs today. As the theme of the summit has captured it well, we need to discuss the role of Buddha Dhamma in strengthening Asia.
The summit is a manifestation of India's Act East policy, which is principled on collective, inclusive and spiritual development of Asia.
Today we stand united as inheritors of this profound legacy. India as a Janmabhoomi, the birthplace of Buddha Dhamma, reaffirms its commitment to strengthening the Dhamma Setu, the Buddhist bridge connecting Asian nations.
The theme of the summit is Role of Buddha Dhamma in Strengthening Asia.
The Prime Minister of India expressed the feelings of not only India, but the Buddhist communities of Asia, that India has given Buddha to the world, not the world. And we will follow the path of Buddha when we are adopting various considerations for the global well-being.
I would like to congratulate Union of Government of India, especially I would like to deep express my gratitude this Buddhist Confederation Association. Buddhist Confederation can organize this World Buddhist Summit for the first time in India.
A special logo of the summit was also released by the President. Anil Thomas, DD India, New Delhi.
Let's now take a look at some other stories making news around the world. French and Dutch authorities raided streaming giant Netflix's offices in Paris and Amsterdam on Tuesday as part of a tax fraud probe. Netflix's Amsterdam headquarters for Europe, the Middle East and Africa was also targeted for a search by a team of officials from both France as well as Netherlands. Netflix is also under investigation in France for its tax filings for 2019, 2020 and 2021. South Korea's privacy watchdog on Tuesday fined social media company Meta 21.6 billion won for illegally collecting sensitive personal information from Facebook users. It was the latest in a series of penalties against Meta by South Korean authorities in recent years as they increase their scrutiny of how the company, which also owns Instagram and WhatsApp, handles private information. French President Emmanuel Macron welcomed Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev to Paris on Tuesday for a meeting that sought to deepen ties in trade, energy and security. Both countries share an interest in climate change, rare earth metals and minerals, and renewable energy. Tunisia expects olive oil output to jump by around 55% this season, giving a boost to both the country's exports of green gold, as that's what it's called, and also to ailing public finances. Tunisia is among the world's top exporters of olive oil, a commodity that has seen growing international interest from both consumers and investors. Time for us to take another breather on DD India NewsHour. But after that, analysis of all that matters in the US presidential election, voting for which is currently underway. Our reporters will be joining us from Ground Zero from Washington, D.C. and Florida, and analysts from here in the studio, as well as from other parts of the country.
Who will be the next president of the US? America decides. DD India reports from Ground Zero.
An election on razor's edge. From the economy to democracy, the stakes can't get any higher. It's Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. Watch Race to the White House as the finish line approaches.
Live and exclusive coverage
Only on DD India.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
गर फिरदौस बर्रुए ज़मी अस्त हमी अस्तो हमी अस्तो हमी अस्त Jammu and Kashmir, nature's finest works. A land of verdant valleys, pristine lakes, striking autumns, unforgettable majestic beauty. A place of unwavering devotion, wholehearted smiles, and warm hospitality.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour with me, Munmun Bhattacharya. And election day voting has begun in the United States with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris vying to become the next president of the United States of America. So that is our continuing big focus. It's election day voting underway in the USA. India says Canada has developed a pattern of making allegations without evidence, slams placing of Indian diplomats under surveillance. French and Dutch authorities raid streaming giant Netflix's offices in Paris and Amsterdam as part of a tax fraud probe. So the big election day is here. Election day voting is taking place in many United States states. And as we speak, this is happening after millions of Americans cast their votes early through in-person voting as well as mail-in ballots. So what are the issues at play? To discuss that, we are being joined by an esteemed panel of guests. I'm pleased to introduce Ambassador Arun Kumar Singh, former Indian ambassador to the USA, joining us virtually. Professor Anshu Joshi from School of International Studies, JNU, is with us in the studio. And Shubhendu Ghosh, a correspondent who's been tracking the developments very closely over the past month or so from Washington, D.C. And we expect Amritpal Singh also to join us later from Florida. Well, Ambassador, coming to you. The race to the White House is as close as it gets. Kamala Harris has a slight edge we are seeing over Trump in the national polling average as of Sunday in the US. But the winner takes all electoral college votes system. That's how it is. Means the presidency will be decided by the way the 7 swing states really vote or fall. And the race is much closer there. So that's 93 electoral votes in all. Are you calling the election?
I think most people in the US are also not calling the election. And if you see the various betting frameworks that are going on, some are betting one way, some are betting the other. So it is clear that there have been many trends that were different from what one would have expected, and therefore they're not able to call. For example, Kamala Harris's candidacy is a historic candidacy. The first time that an African-American woman, a South Asian woman, an Indian-American woman is a serious contender for the presidency. And despite that, the majority of the African-American male vote, as per the pre-poll service, is not going with her. And the majority of the Latino male vote is not going with her. And if you look at the Indian-American community, 80% had voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, 70% for Joe Biden in 2020. And again, this time the indication are that only 60% would vote for Kamala Harris. So it is because of this, because the priority focus for voters this time, as indicated, have been the economy, issue of jobs, inflation, and the issue of immigration. And on that, the Biden-Harris administration has been seen as weak.
Yes.
Also,
yes, please carry on.
And also, Kamala Harris was not quite able to distance herself from the Biden administration's policies because she needed to show that she would be a fresh face, she would bring fresh policies to address the voters' concern. But because she had worked with Biden and because Biden had stepped aside and nominated her to be a successor, she felt it was not possible to distance herself adequately. So I think that was part of the problem. But if she wins, you will find that she will project herself as being a different policy framework, a different kind of leader in the years ahead.
Okay. Building on that point that you've just made, and later I'll be broadening the discussion and bringing in others as well. So Ambassador, if Harris wins, she would make history. We know that she would then become the first woman, first Asian American, as well as first black woman to win the presidency. A Trump victory would also be historic because I believe he'd join Grover Cleveland as the only president to serve non-consecutive terms. He would do so after becoming the only president ever impeached twice too. So, and the only former president ever convicted of felony crimes as well. So is the US really ready, you think, for the first woman African-American and Asian-American president? If not, to whose advantage could deep polarization work?
So again, according to most opinion polls that have come so far, the US is going through this dilemma. And non-college educated males, African-American males, Latino males are not voting for her. But it's just that the women vote is going to her in a very, very disproportionate manner, partly because she's a woman candidate, but also because of some of the policies related to abortion that Trump had been advocating, and also that was endorsed by the US Supreme Court. So there is a blowback against that. So let's see if this time a woman candidate is able to win. Because as you mentioned, if Trump does win, it reflects where US society is, that a person with his kind of background, impeached twice, indicted on many counts, convicted on one charge, and yet he's able to control the Republican Party. And Republican congressmen and senators who wanted to oppose him lost in primaries. So he has brought his weight to bear on the American political system. And I think it reflects the fact that in the phase of globalization, jobs were sucked away from America, manufacturing was sucked away.
Yes.
So a very important segment of the US middle class blames the elites for that.
Absolutely. We'll build on that. Shubhendu, coming to you now. We are reporting that over 82 million people had already voted early. Well over a third of the over 186 million Americans who've registered to vote in elections this year. We were discussing those numbers some time back. A higher number of registered Democrat voters have gone for early voting than their Republican counterparts rather. So Democrat voters show a greater preference for mail voting, we know that. Also, Trump in the past has branded these mail ballots as corrupt. But Trump supporters have closed the gap on early voting this time, and that's helped by an about turn from Trump, who has encouraged them to vote any way they like. So is there mixed messaging by Trump then on early voting?
Absolutely, Munmun. This election, as and when it concludes and we have the results, is going to be remembered for many firsts. Yes, you rightly mentioned, traditionally it's the Democrats who prefer to go for the early voting. In fact, if you look at past statements, Donald Trump had in fact spoken against the idea of early voting and also saw it as one of the many catalysts of voting frauds. But this time over, we see Republicans have not been left far behind as far as early voting is concerned. In those above 80 million American early voters that we've been talking about, a significant chunk is also Republicans. And Donald Trump has been this time over talking about Republican supporters to come out and vote at the opportunity they get, whether it's early voting or whether it's the big day today. Both the leaders realize, Donald Trump in particular, that it is going to be a number game, particularly in the swing states, and even a single vote difference in the swing states can get you the whole lot of electoral votes, given that it's an electoral college system that works. So they don't want to leave even a single vote, even a single voter left behind. And I think that is the motivation we see. Democrats, of course, have always pushed for early voting, but Republicans, Donald Trump, at this time over, really in all his messaging, talking about coming out and voting and making sure that the numbers are so high that what he alleges as a potential voting fraud that the Democrats could engage in could be defeated by the great numbers. So the numbers are taking center stage here, particularly in the swing states. Munmu?
Oh yes, and the excitement is peaking, and also a lot of suspense about what really will happen once elections in most states are called. Shubhendu, building on that, Trump's team has reportedly engaged about 175,000 poll workers and poll watchers. Now, Democrats think this as voter intimidation. Trump has avoided answering questions, you would remember, on whether he will accept the results if he loses, and commentators fear that there is a high chance of him claiming victory on the 5th of November, and you've reminded us already about the January 6th insurrection earlier. Are reporters like you really prepared for everything?
Well, that is exactly what is making this election so tense. The election day has just about started in West Coast. Perhaps it's delayed even further because of the time difference. But just this very, very sharp polarization. Both the candidates have said that if the opponent wins, it's going to be a step forward towards destruction for the idea of America. Such is the kind of rhetoric that both leaders have engaged in. It is very difficult to predict, very difficult to imagine how each one of them is going to accept a defeat. One leader, of course, will have to accept the defeat and one will come out on top. But what will that scene look like? And if one were to reflect on what happened in the previous edition of the elections, 2021, those scary scenes at the US Capitol, in front of which, by the way, I'm standing at the moment, that is what is really making the administrators, the voting officials, the voters very concerned. In fact, many of the early voters said that they suspect, they are concerned about law and order situation on the final day of voting. Therefore, they're coming out early to support their candidate and also secure their vote. So these are elements. Again, the whole allegations of voting fraud, of stealing the election, that induces a great deal of nervousness in the whole electoral system. The officials would tell you that the system is very secured. However, the election time is also the time of perception building. There are passionate supporters, voters on both sides of the aisle for Republicans and Democrats. And once the news comes in, later in the evening, later tonight, or America time, or tomorrow, as to which candidate is winning, it will be very critical to find out how the loser side reacts.
Shubhendu, I've been trying to find whether Kamala Harris has voted already. Would you know whether there was mail-in balloting by her or early in-person voting, or is she expected to vote still? Just a quick one.
Yeah, that update we'll just be sharing with you, Munmun, but she is in Washington, D.C. I can tell you Howard College University is where she is going to be positioning herself as the voting ends and the counting begins. So Kamala Harris is close here to Washington, D.C. as a vice president. Also, this is the place we're going to be. Of course, with the updates on voting, we'll be sharing that in just a short bit.
Okay, we'll wait for that, and soon we'll also be joined by, as you can see on our your screens, Amritpal Singh from Florida, where a lot of action around the Trumps is happening. But before that, Professor Anshu Joshi, waiting very patiently. Could the early election trends be misleading like last time around we saw?
Yes, because US elections are very complex. And right now what people are doing, they are voting for to choose electors for 538 seats, and the magic number is 270. These electors will make the electors college, and this college will vote in the month of December to choose the president and vice president of United States of America. Now, how these electors vote and the kind of pattern that emerges and the process involved is actually very complex. I'll give you an example, Munmun. For example, the state of Pennsylvania, which is going to be a decisive factor in deciding the upcoming president and vice president of United States of America, has 19 electoral votes. So, the candidate who gets more than 50% of votes of these 19 electoral votes in the month of December would get all the 19 votes at the end of the process.
It's a winner takes
all approach. So, it's very complex and interesting. So, we don't know who will turn the table at the last moment, and we know there are 7 swinging states at the moment, and every day the speculations actually change. Media comes up with the different numbers. So, it's altogether a different ball game when it comes to the US presidential elections. So, early speculations could be misleading. However, all I can say is that at the end of this particular phase, it will become clear that who is going to get an edge in the month of December, and who could become the next president and vice president of United States of America.
It'll be interesting to see the timelines from here on. But Amrit, coming to you, tell us about all the action you are seeing there around the Trumps.
Well, where I am in West Palm Beach, Donald Trump is expected to come with Melania and cast his vote. We're waiting for that. In about half hour from now, we are told that he shall be casting his vote. After casting his vote, because there are his supporters who have gathered here, he may address them, give a short address to them, which could be on expected lines, saying that I am winning this election, as he closed his election in Michigan, his campaign in Michigan, where he said that if you vote, I win. So remember to vote. That's the message both sides are trying to put out, because by the end of the day, as Dr. Joshi was saying, it's about who gets most votes in the swing states that will decide who will sit in the Oval Office for the next 4 years. So both camps throughout the campaign trying to get their voter base out, and not just their voter base, trying to poach voters from the other side. So that's what is happening right now. And their campaign, the kind of intense campaign that we saw over the past 100+ days clearly points to the fact that that has worked. And that's why we are seeing the kind of queues, the kind of lines outside polling booths, people coming in. About 74 million already have cast their vote in early and mail-in votes. So that's a good sign for democracy. How it translates down to a clear mandate, we'll get to know in the coming days.
Oh, absolutely. We'll talk about the role that the swing states are expected to play. But before that, Amrit, you've been there for a good 15-20 days now, reporting, filing stories, talking to people. What are some of the headline issues that you think could swing the election this time around? We know there's a lot of number game involved here. There's no direct election. But issue-wise, what are the top some of the issues that you think could swing this election in a sense?
Jobs, economy, taxes, rising cost of living, housing affordability. For women, the issue of women's rights and abortion. I think that is what's going to decide the issue for the average American. Then there are communities like the Indian American community, the Latinos, For them, immigration could be an issue. H-1B visas could be an issue, given that the H-1Bs don't vote, but the broader Indian American community, they part a form of the Indian American community. For the Arab Americans, the Gaza-Israel war. So these are the issues which matter to people. What I've gathered in the past 20 days that I've been here, traveling across the United States, from California to Texas to New York to Pennsylvania, now in Florida, that's what people tell me.
Okay, let's get an ambassador here. Ambassador, counting of in-person votes on election day today takes place the same day, we know. But are complete results not likely to be known for days after polls close, considering that different states have different rules when it comes to processing of early ballots, and some states accepting even overseas mail ballots and military ballots for a few days after election day, if of course postmarked by the 5th of November?
So if the voting is closed, then we should expect that the results will not be announced very soon, because it is only when there is a gap that, the various news channels start calling the election, and that's, starts the process, because the formal endorsement, of course, comes later. But if the voting is closed, then they will hold back, because if you remember, even in 2020, around midnight, Joe Biden came out, spoke to his supporters and said, even though at the moment the trends are against us, the kind of votes that are coming in, we will eventually win. So wait. And therefore, the final trend became clear only the next day. And again, it is expected that if the voting is closed, there might be a large number of court cases and litigation. Both sides have, put together a large number of lawyers to contest the outcomes where it doesn't work for them. So we'll have to wait and see how that process plays out.
So after the battle at the hustings, the battle between the lawyers, like we saw last time around, Ambassador, also looking at how the swing states voted in 2020, all voted for Democrats except North Carolina, which voted for Republicans. This time surveys show a small gap between Trump and Harris supporters. This time some of these states have tried to bring in rules also to avoid delays in declaration of results. So do we expect the outcome to be known sooner?
No, I think it will be. I think it is not possible to suggest or predict that the outcome will be known sooner, because if the vote is very close, they may ask for a recount of the votes. They may even ask in some cases for hand counting of votes. So all kinds of procedures and stratagems may be adopted. So if the voting is closed, I expect the process will go on for some time.
Okay. Professor Anshu, are Democrats banking on urban support? Because if we look at the graphs, we see that there has been an uptick there over the elections. Also, Republicans banking on the rural support. And do you think women will be overwhelmingly voting for Kamala Harris, considering how she's, come out and supported abortion rights, reproductive rights, etc.?
So, Mulmun, instead of looking at the vertical layers of the kind of population United States of America has in terms of urban or rural voters, or for that matter gender, or for that matter age groups, I would like to take a look at the issues taken by both the candidates and their difference in approach. So for me, there are 5 major themes or areas or issues for Trump and Kamala Harris. Both are campaigning in a different way. So first and foremost, issues related to economy of United States of America, and there is a difference in the approach of both the candidates. And Trump is advocating for Make in America here. He is also talking about hiring in America. So that raises an exclamation mark for India there. And Kamala's approach is a bit different here. Then the second theme revolves around this abortion law, wherein Kamala Harris might get support from women voters, of course, and some voters from Generation Z also, and the generation of people or voters who believe in diversity of gender as well. Then the third theme revolves around foreign policy. So here Trump seems to be a stronger contender, I would say, because he has claimed that if he is the chosen one, he would end the conflict not only in West Asia, but also the war between Russia and Ukraine. So this is another important theme. Then there is another issue that is related to immigration, and there we have to see that this actually matters to the voters related to Latino community and those who come from this South America, because we all know that how this issue of illegal immigration between Mexico and United States of America creates a lot of challenges related to security and peace for United States of America. And then there is another important issue related to climate change containment, wherein the approach of both the candidates actually can be taken from the ideology or the parties they belong to. And we all know that when Trump was president, his lenient attitude towards this particular prioritized area at global stage also had raised the eyebrow of entire world, because he had withdrew United States of America from Paris Agreement. And here Kamala again has a different approach that might attract voters, especially from younger generation and from like urban voters. So these are the themes I think we should look at, and then it will vary. I mean, we can't verticalize people depending on their gender, or for that matter where they are living, or for that matter what are they working into, or their sectors. How they will pick the issue, I think that will vary, but these are the major issues that will be picked up by the voters, and accordingly these voters would cast their votes.
So you've brought into perspective for us the issues that matter in this election, and this election really means a lot for the rest of the world, considering that the United States wields that kind of political clout around the world. Well, we leave it at that. Thank you so much. Amritpal Singh from Florida, Shabendu from outside Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. A very picturesque frame there, both in Florida as well as Washington, D.C. And thank you, Professor Joshi, and thank you, Ambassador, for joining us. Such a pleasure to have all of you to give a head start on all the analysis vis-a-vis the U.S. presidential elections. That's it then in this edition of DD India NewsHour, but do share your thoughts with us on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news and more US election analysis as it breaks here on DD India. This is Munmun Bhattacharya from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India NewsHour. But do stay tuned to DD India for all the credible analysis vis-a-vis the US presidential election, voting for which is underway. Thanks for watching.